What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and it's Tuesday morning, which means it's time to talk through our must-add waiver wire targets for Week 3 of the fantasy football season. All of these guys are under 50% owned in ESPN leagues. We're going to talk through about 10 to 15 targets, ranging from how deep your league is here. Now, as always, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. We're going to skip the intro because we're going to talk through 10 to 15 players here. And first up, we have the Chiefs running backs, right? We have Isaiah Pacheco. He goes down. He's had to have a surgery on his fractured fibula, projected to be out 6 or more weeks. Who knows how long he is out? And I think that the wrong thing to do here is say, well, Pacheco's going to be gone. This is going to be a headache of a timeshare, right? We have Samaje Perine here as an ad. We have Carson Steele as an ad. We have Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming off of IR in a few weeks. We have Kareem Hunt visiting with the team. There's just too much going on here. Well, it's the Chiefs offense. They're going to score a lot of points. It is Andy Reid, who always has a fantasy-relevant running back. I think this is one of those spots where if you watch the channel and you are a hero RB drafter, a zero RB drafter, if you have any kind of running back troubles, you need to have at least one Kansas City running back on your roster in most cases. Now, my preferred option here is Perine. Now, I'm just going to highlight him here. He is, rostered in only 3.6% of ESPN leagues. That should be way, way higher. And I think that Jacob Sanderson actually put it really well. Now, he is a friend of the channel. We draft teams with Jacob. He has an article every week called The Hitchhiker's Guide to Running Backs, where he kind of talks through lesser-owned running backs, your zero RB type of guys. And to me, he's one of the guys that I trust the most when it comes to looking at running back roles. And after the news came out that Pacheco got hurt, my bad, he said, some of the names I've seen floated, like Lenny, McKinnon, to a lesser extent, Hunt, makes sense that they need a body, but they could have signed those guys all summer and didn't. They prioritized Perine, who's a similar archetype the second he was cut, and to a lesser extent, Hunt, as in he's less purely a passing down back than Lenny McKinnon, but he has pretty much out of juice as a rusher himself this year. And then he says one last note. Some people down in the fantasy prospects here wrong, in my opinion. Pacheco is not the type of archetype of running back who's racked up the most fantasy value in this offense. Receiving-focused backs like Jerick McKinnon, Dameon Williams, Darrell Williams, if you guys remember that, had the highest ceiling. We want to juice the pass rate over expectation in a receiving-focused role, and I agree with him. That's what my preferred choice is. Perine, this is somebody who led the league in yards per out run last year. He's someone that, in relief of guys like Joe Mixon in years past, has been very much really good in those roles. And when we look at a guy like Jerick McKinnon, who was age 30 in 2022, he was a late season hammer. He was the RB9 in points per game from weeks 8 on in 2022. If you remember, he was like a legitimate league winner, Jerick McKinnon, down the stretch. And Samaje Perine looks very much the same. He's 29 years old, right? McKinnon was 30 at the time, and he's very much that role that has thrived in this offense in the past. But I also very much think, like, my preferred guy is Perine. He's the one that I'm actually going to be putting a big fab bid on. But I also think, again, like, all of these guys need to be rostered. Like, I'll say Carson Steele is another great one as well, and one that I would even put a fab bid on as well. And the reason for this is that they really like him. He looked really good in the preseason. He's like this fullback, running back hybrid, but they liked him so much that they kept him on the roster. They cut Deneric Prince to keep him on the roster. They then used him. Like, he literally had 7 carries in this last game in week 2. Kyle Dvorak points out as well, when you look at kind of the snap share and how they sort of divided up the snaps here, he said Carson Steele lost a fumble late in the second quarter before Isaiah Pacheco was hurt. Andy Reid still sent him out for the final 2 carries as the Chiefs prepared to kick a game-winning field goal. I know Perine just joined the team, but have to like Reid going back to Steele there. So even though Steele fumbled in this game, they still went back to him. He also outsnapped Samaje Perine in this past game. So right now, Carson Steele might have a leg up just in terms of the near term. I think Samaje Perine has the higher ceiling. If he can get the receiving work, the red zone work, all of that, and then also if you want to explain away some of him not playing a ton in those first 2 weeks due to him being new with the team, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. Now, in like super, super deep leagues, where like these are my high stakes 20-round leagues, also throw out Kareem Hunt and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Of course, Kareem Hunt comes in for a visit. He's not even officially with the team yet, but I think that he's worth an ad in deep leagues. Same with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He might be dust at this point, but he does probably have the most experience with this offense when it comes to Samaje Perine, Carson Steele. Steele's a rookie. Perine just got signed there. Kareem Hunt, actually, funny enough, would have a lot of experience as, he was with the Chiefs early on, but I imagine things have changed a bunch since he left. But yeah, in deeper leagues, I will be taking, again, I just think having a Chiefs running back on your roster during this time that Pacheco is out is probably a good idea. And then we'll talk about in terms of like our top ads here this week. We have the Texans running backs. Now, of course, it came out that like Joe Mixon is probably going to be fine. He's done this in the past before where he's like toughed out an ankle injury. Adam Hutchinson says here that Joe Mixon has had a high ankle sprain in the past. He toughed it out and was fine. So we'll see how this goes. It seems like there was nothing serious and that it's going to be okay, but I don't mind picking up Texans running backs just in case if he tweaks it again or if like something happens. And, sometimes these injuries can just pile up. And the video of it itself looked pretty nasty. So I don't know. We'll see. He did try and like tape it up and then come back in the game, and then he sort of got pushed out of the game. So I would just roster the Texans running backs 100%, way more so than Dameon Pierce's Cam Akers. Cam Akers actually looked like he had some juice. He had 7 carries, 1 target when Mixon went down in this game. He tore an Achilles. We're seeing J.K. Dobbins absolutely ball out right now. I don't think Akers is going to do the same, but similar to the Chiefs, good offense, lots of scoring. Mixon already has his ankle rolled up on here. I just want to be rostering his backup just in case. We've seen things happen. Like Evan Ingram out of nowhere was an inactive this week. It can happen where it's like, oh, Mixon is fine, and then like all of a sudden he gets a setback and he's like limited in practice on Friday, and all of a sudden things are in flux there. Then we'll also talk about Hunter Henry, who was actually in our week 1 waiver wire targets video. I think he might be in like every target video we've had so far for waivers, but Hunter Henry has a monster day. He has 12 targets, 8 catches, 109 yards. He's only owned in 10% of ESPN leagues despite being the tight end 5. And if you don't have, Trey McBride, Bowers, Kittle, like any of the top 6 or 7 guys, Hunter Henry's the next best option. Like to me, he is a top 12 tight end rest of season. He is the only tight end not named Trey McBride with over 80% of the routes run and a 20% plus target share. Right now, he has a 30% target share, 85% of the routes. Like that is really, really good usage. He's pretty much the wide receiver 1 for the Patriots, and that's why we wanted him in preseason, right? Where top 2 targets is usually what we need for a tight end to really pay off. Hunter Henry's the number 1 target in his offense. Of course, will we like a better quarterback than Jacoby Brissett? Sure, but if Hunter Henry is just going to rack up catches like this, again, 8 catches for 109 yards, right now as weak as tight end is, that will 100% do it. Then we'll talk about Ty Chandler here. Probably not available in your league, but I did want to touch on him. 46.6% roster. This is more of your, maybe a 10-man league or more casual league here. But Aaron Jones, this is a tweet from JJ Zacharyson. Aaron Jones was banged up a bit against the 49ers. Ty Chandler. It's a little bit early here, fellas. Ty Chandler saw his running back share go up from 35% to 53% week over week. He failed to see a target. Unfortunately, his route participation dropped by about 12 percentage points. So not the best usage in the world, right? His rushing went up, or he actually out-carried Aaron Jones 10-9 and then 82 yards to 32 yards, but then he didn't catch as many passes. So his role kind of stayed the same, but he looked explosive, right? 82 yards on 10 carries is really, really good. He could earn a bigger role. Aaron Jones has been fragile in the past. We had this hamstring injury that nagged him all of last season. So Ty Chandler needs to be rostered in a Vikings offense that is a lot better than expected. Then we'll talk Rico Dowdle. He's someone that we've had our eye on all offseason. Has it been super pretty? No. But he is available in like 2/3 of ESPN leagues right now. He out-touched and out-snapped Zeke after that wasn't the case in week 1. The issue is we now have Deuce Vaughn in the mix. This is a tweet from Dave Richard. Dowdle had 46% of the snaps with Dak. Zeke 41%. Deuce Vaughn 10%. Zeke also had a snap inside the 10-yard line. It's a bit of an ugly split, but it is worth rostering these Cowboys running backs, and we could see a passing of the baton as Zeke is kind of old and ineffective, and we get more run towards Rico Dowdle in this offense, kind of gaining some ground in this depth chart. Then our 6th must-add player here, DOnta Foreman. This one's kind of in a deeper league, but, I mean, he had 15 opportunities this week. I think any running back who's getting 15 opportunities should be rostered. Jerome Ford had just 9. I don't know if this sticks. I really don't know what happened to make Jerome Ford go from 73% of the snaps to 42%, and then vice versa, DOnta Foreman 1% of the snaps to 38%. But in fantasy football, we will take that all day for DOnta Foreman. Let's talk about Bucky Irving. I mean, we've talked about him pretty much every week here. He's just one of these guys where nothing has really changed for him, but he needs to be rostered everywhere. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, by the way, we want running backs and good offenses. The Bucs have been one of the best offenses in the NFL to start the year. And that doesn't look like it's going to change very much. Now, Bucky Irving comes out here once again, outrushes Rachaad White on less carries. Rachaad White now has a 2 yards per carry on the season so far. There's just no way. Look, you can keep blaming it on the offensive line. That's what every single Rachaad White fan does. It's the offensive line, whatever. Sure, but if Bucky Irving continues to be more efficient, and finds a way to run between the tackles, it's going to be tough to keep on feeding Rachaad White the way that he's been fed the last few years. Ryan Heath has a tweet here. Bucky Irving continues to get incrementally more involved. He has a 40% plus backfield carry share this week. He wasn't targeted, but it's only a matter of time until it's a 50-50 split. Gibbs says rookie Bucky Irving outrushed Rachaad White again. Irving only rushed for 22 yards. White rushed 10 times for 18 yards. Not really a huge change in the role, but as Bucky Irving continues to produce pretty much the same output as Rachaad White, things should start slipping into his favor. And at the very least, he's a really good handcuff. And so is the next guy, Braelon Allen. I do want to say, if you're a Breece owner out there, Adam Levitan points it out here, love Braelon Allen, but was still surprised by the split yesterday. Braelon Allen had 20 snaps. He had 12 routes. He had 11 opportunities to Breece Hall's 22 opportunities. All I'll say is I actually got scared for a second. Breece Hall got a little bit banged up in this game where he kind of like, he got banged up early. He didn't miss a full drive, but he missed a good chunk of that next drive. And then from there on out, he was kind of, on this like 70% snap share basis, whereas in week 1, he was like a 95% type of guy. I wouldn't worry about Breece Hall. It's just that he got a little bit banged up. And I will say, this offensive line, I'm very excited about as a Jets fan. The pass blocking is amazing. Rodgers had a clean pocket all day. He only had one pressure, and that was from the center, Joe Tittman. So when your tackles are holding up that well, that's huge. But the interior is not amazing, so there's not getting a lot of push up front. And what's happening is you're getting a lot of these Breece carries that just run into a brick wall. And because they like Breece so much, I think that they would rather bring in Braelon Allen for some of these, 4th and 1 short yardage situations. I will say, that might get scary if we start to see this really happen on the goal line. But Braelon Allen's touchdowns, one was a screen and the other was like a 20-yard rush. So it wasn't like he vultured, inside the 5 carry. If that starts to happen, that will be scary. But for now, he's just this guy where it's like 3rd and 1. They're going to stack the box. And instead of ramming Breece in for like 3 yards, it's Braelon Allen just, fresh off the bench, really big body back, has a ton of juice. But that's kind of all his role is right now. So I would really only look at him as a handcuff. He is not somebody I'm starting in a standalone role. Now let's talk about some wide receivers here. I will be honest. I mean, this is why I always preach filling my wide receivers through the flex plus 1 or 2, right? We're now seeing injuries are racking up right now. So having that extra firepower on your bench is huge. And the other thing is like when these wide receivers go down, it's not the same with running backs, right? Where if Breece Hall goes down, Braelon Allen is the number 1 waiver wire target and someone I would spend like maybe 100% of my fab on, which sounds crazy, but I would. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are down, and we are left picking up the pieces with Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Whittington, Tutu Atwell. It's not the same, right? So there's just not this like plethora of options at wide receiver, and that's why we prioritize them so much in the beginning of the year in the draft, because you can't really find them off of waivers unless if they're like rookies who are developing into a role. Like, I don't know if any of these guys are going to be monsters. I will say I do love Jordan Whittington as that rookie with upside, but what happened here is Cooper Kupp leaves the game early with an ankle injury. He's expected to miss an extended period of time, could go on IR. So now we're without Puka, we're without Cooper Kupp, and I have this screenshot of just like the leaders in routes run. So that final column, that receiving, that's just your routes run. You have your targets, your receiving grade. You can kind of make whatever picture you want out of this. For me, I would put Demarcus Robinson. He is the highest floor. He is going to run all the routes. He's going to be on the field all the time. I don't know if that's going to turn into fantasy-relevant production, but he's at least going to be out there. And the reason that we're even targeting these wide receivers in the first place is because if you have Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, there should be some fantasy scoring here if they can figure some things out. Then I also wanted to shout out, of course, Jordan Whittington. He's a fun rookie where you can see here on this screen. He has I don't have the yards per out run, but he has like just shy of a 2 yards per out run. 2 catches for 22 yards isn't great, but he can be used in the running game. He can be used in the passing game. He's somebody that could develop as a rookie who has the upside. Then I'll also shout out Tutu Atwell. He had like a 40% targets per out run when he came in this game. 4 targets on 14 routes, 48 yards on 14 routes. Those are both really good numbers. We saw last year he had 16.8 points per game from weeks 1 through 3 and was actually really good last year. This could be in a world without Puka and without Cup, we could see Tutu Atwell come back in the mix. We shouted out Tyler Johnson last week. I got to be honest, he's probably my least favorite ad. He had a good week 1. After that was pretty quiet. Still ran a ton of routes, but it wouldn't shock me at all if they started using Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington in his place. And of course, I do want to shout out Colby Parkinson as well. Rostered in 44% of leagues, so probably not available, but now that there's no Puka and there's no Cup, Colby Parkinson is very much in play to be kind of like this team's wide receiver 1 as a fun tight end grab off of waivers. Like he's somebody, if Hunter Henry's not out there, I want Colby Parkinson. Then let's talk about Quentin Johnston. He's the wide receiver 23 right now. He's available everywhere. He's had back-to-back weeks of over 20% target shares. It's pretty crazy what he's doing right now. He had 6 targets, 5 catches, 51 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has over a 2 yards per out run. He has over a 70 PFF grade. This is just stuff that we really wanted to see from him as a rookie. And as much as I am skeptical, he also is a year 2 breakout candidate attached to Justin Herbert, and he looks good through 2 weeks. So I think that he is worth picking up. And then we'll shout out some rookies here. Again, I'm very partial to the rookies. I want to be swinging for that rookie upside, right? Finding this year's Jaden Reed, finding this year's Rashee Rice. Jalen Polk, this is the rookie receiver report I have pulled up here. He wasn't amazing through 2 weeks, right? Like we look at his stuff here, 69% of the routes, 10% targets per out run is bad, 0.45 yards per out run is bad. But he scored a touchdown. He's working himself on the field, and there is some upside that if Drake May comes in, that Drake May could just completely revitalize this passing offense. And I also want to talk about Xavier Legette, quiet in week 2, but had a 30% targets per out run in week 1. He is out here, only 52% of the routes this week. That's not amazing, but I do want to stash Legette as a guy that I liked. First round pick, flash some target earning in week 1. And now with Andy Dalton in the mix instead of Bryce Young, that could give us some opportunity for something better there. And then we'll talk about the Bengals wide receivers. Of course, Iosivas, he should be rostered. I will say the thing that it makes me nervous with these receivers you pick up, because he had just a 15% target share through 2 games, Iosivas here. T. Higgins is back soon. He did score 2 touchdowns, but the target volume isn't really there. So it's kind of one of those guys you throw in your flex and you pray. I also wanted to shout out Jermaine Burton. As we talk about these rookie wide receivers with upside, he hasn't run enough routes to qualify for the rookie receiver report, but he's one of these guys where he's really talented. They drafted him. He slipped in the draft due to character concerns. He's already kind of been flaring up with falling asleep in meetings and not really being on top of everything. But if there was one guy to make a bet on, I'd rather it be character questions than talent questions. It's very clear that he can play. He went from 3% of the routes run in week 1 to 20% in week 2. And this is kind of one of those, very clear rookie wide receiver breakout trends where if we see him go from 3% to 20%, and then maybe by week 6, he's at 50%. And then week 10, he's at 70%. I don't know if that's going to be possible, right? Iosivas has looked good. T. Higgins will be coming back, but there is some opportunity in this passing offense. And Jermaine Burton, on his 20% of the routes this week, had a huge 47-yard catch. Every single time he's on the field, preseason, last week, he's making a play. He's downfield. He's scoring touchdowns. He's looking really good. It just comes down to, can he pay attention in the meeting rooms? Can he understand the playbook? Can he stay out of trouble? And again, when we're talking about just a guy I'm looking for to crush from weeks 10 on, I want the guy who's good at football and has the off-field issues, especially as a rookie. Now, after that, we have Derek Carr and then some deep cuts at wide receiver. Again, I'm not super interested. I will list them because I'm going to get comments like, Ron, what about this guy? Ron, what about this guy? Josh Downs and Alec Pierce. Josh Downs is coming back. Alec Pierce has had 2 good weeks so far, but the issue is that Anthony Richardson has been pretty unreliable getting the ball to his pass catchers. Josh Downs just makes this even murkier, where outside of Michael Pittman, might be a 3 wide receiver rotation between Pierce, A.D. Mitchell, Josh Downs. All the Colts receivers, they're worth stashes, but I just don't know when I'll ever feel confident enough to put Alec Pierce in my flex spot, to put Josh Downs in my flex spot. But if you're down bad, for sure, go ahead and stash them. Jalen Tolbert is, I guess, interesting on the Cowboys. I'm just a little bit weary. I mean, maybe you can look at him as a true year 3 breakout candidate, but this is somebody that is in year 3 at this point. It was just his second touchdown he scored this week ever in 27 career games, and it was his first ever game over 5 targets. Maybe that's a trend that will continue. I would bet against it and say it's probably just a flash in the pan, but again, if you're down bad, if you're in a deep league, let's say it's a 14-team league and you're flexing, Tyler Johnson or something. Sure, go ahead, stash Jalen Tolbert. I just don't know that he is going to win leagues or anything. But then our last guy we'll talk about here is Derek Carr. He is the QB2 right now, over on ESPN at least. I had him down as the QB6. Depends on what your scoring is, but he's been, I mean, this Saints offense is the number one offense in football. Derek Carr is matchup proof as he just lit up the Cowboys. Even in a game where he had like 16 pass attempts, still hit like 20 plus points in that game. You know, if you have Caleb Williams or Jordan Love or something, Derek Carr is someone you should be picking up as kind of like a top 12 guy rest of season or until the Saints slow down as an offense. Now, that is going to do it for us today. As always, once I post this video, I will be working on my waiver wire report and fab guide for week 3 of the fantasy football season. You can find that over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description or the comment section down below. I have my waiver wire guide where I talk through my exact fab recommendations for every single player. I also get questions all the time. Ron, who are we dropping? Who's on the drop list? That's on the Patreon waiver wire report as well, where I have on the bottom, after I tell you how much fab I'm bidding on every single player, I also have, boom, here are players I'm comfortable dropping in my fantasy leagues. And you have my in-season rankings on there, my rest of season rankings in there for trades that come out Wednesdays. All of that good stuff is on the Patreon. But if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, oh.